This is lesson 3 in the financial literacy unit. We are learning about additional earnings today. So we've already talked about hourly wages, salaries, commission, piecework in lessons 1 and 2. Today we're learning about additional earnings. So tips, bonuses, overtime, things like that. So let's do our first example, which is talking about overtime. There's some common language that we need to understand when we're doing our overtime calculations. The two most common kind of ways to earn overtime wages are time and a half and double time. So what those mean is time and a half means you earn the same amount plus another half of the amount. So it's basically 1.5 times your regular wage on those extra hours that you work. And double time means simply 2 times your regular wage, so double what you normally earn. All right, so let's do an example. It says Marcel works for a construction company. I'm just going to highlight some key things here. He earns $35.82 per hour for a 40-hour work week. He is paid time and a half for any overtime hours. So last week he worked for 43.5 hours. How much will he earn? Okay, so when you do these calculations, I like to split it into 2 parts, like his regular hours and then his overtime, and then just add them together. So for his regular hours, he worked at this regular hours of 40, and he earns $35.82. Per hour for those. So if you type that into a calculator, I've already done that ahead of time, I get $1,432.80. So that's his regular wage. So I'm just going to underline that. Now his overtime, he worked for, if you subtract off those hours that he worked for his regular, he worked for three and a half extra hours this week. So we're going to do the calculation like this. So 3.5 extra hours times his regular wage times 1.5, because the 1.5 is the time and a half, right? And 1.5 times his regular wage. So if you multiply all 3 of those together, you get $188.06. Now his overall earnings, or his total, would just be those 2 things added up together, which is $1,620.86. So I think splitting it up into the regular and the overtime and then adding them together is kind of the clearest and best way to do those overtime questions or calculations. Okay, let's talk about bonuses. Bonuses are really common for a number of different reasons. In this example here, Raymond is receiving some isolation pay, which means he's working far away from home, away from any major cities. So he's getting an extra bonus on top of his normal salary. So his regular monthly pay is $6,245, and he's offered a bonus of 12%. So what would his total monthly salary be? So let's again split this into regular, bonus, and then total. Regular salary is already told to us. That's $6,245. So no real calculation to do there. For the bonus, we want to calculate 12% of our regular salary. And remember, for a percent of a number, we are changing this into a decimal, so dividing it by 100, because our calculator works in decimals. Of always means multiply when it comes after a percentage, decimal, or fraction. And then, oh, sorry, I wrote this in the wrong color. I need to keep consistent here. 0.12 times 6,245. And we get, let me just pull up my calculator. I forgot to do this one ahead of time. 0.12 times 6,245. We get $749.40. Okay, and so the total is going to be the regular wage plus the bonus. And if you add those two together, you get $6,994.40. Just a little tip here, if you want to save some time, you can actually calculate the total in one step. If you want to multiply by 112%, meaning you're including the regular and then also the bonus all in one. I'm just going to show this here. This is optional, but it allows you to do it quickly. You could start with your 62.45 and multiply by 1.12. 100 because you're including the regular wage and then the extra 12%. You'll get straight to the answer. So that's optional if you want to do it in one step. Okay, let's move on to example 3. Tips, really common in the service industry, right? So let's read this example. It says, Jake is a waiter at a restaurant. He sold $12,568 last month. The average tip was 15%. How much did Jake make in tips? So again, we want to do the percent of a number here. 15% of $12,568. So we change this to a decimal. We multiply in order to type that into our calculator. And I've already done this one. It's going to be $1,885.40. Okay, now it says if Jake had to give away 25% of his tips to the kitchen and bar staff, that's really common to do a tip sharing. How much does he earn after the deduction? So if he's giving away 25%, he's going to have 75% of his tips will remain. Will be kept for himself, right? So the fastest way to do this question is just to calculate 75% of his tips because that's how much he's going to earn. We're not calculating how much is being given away here. We're calculating how much he's keeping. So we're doing 0.75 times 1,885, and that's going to be $1,413.90. You could have done that in 2 steps. You could have calculated 25% of his earnings and then subtracted it, but it's faster just to do 75%. Okay, and that's the end of that lesson.